All right. Thank you again for tuning into another episode of Mental Health Mondays. I am Myndrunner, and I am excited because my guest at this time, he is got the stats to be perhaps the Mental Health Mondays wrestling champion. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well as standing at 6'7" and over 211 pounds. He is also a former writer for Sports Illustrated, and he is a Zen Guru Master. We're going to share a lot more about that very soon. Retiring at the young age of under 40 at 36 years old. He is the Alabama equivalent of Hunter S. Thompson. Fear and Loathing at Auburn himself, ladies and gentlemen, a published author, a fellow scribe at heart, and one of the most interesting people. Perhaps we could be related because we have both have the most sick sense of humor. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Jacobs. Matthew, welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. I'm real excited to talk to you. You and I have been communicating only recently. We've kind of met through the writer's block, and you and I have just been going back and forth. And I think we kind of have a similar sense of humor, and also a similar passion for mental health and really helping others with that. And I understand you have a extensive history, and I understand I'm also honored to be your 1200th podcast that you have been on in your lifetime. Is that correct?
Somewhere in there, yes, sir.
So the honor is mine. Thank you so much. But in all seriousness, I mean, we like to have fun on Mental Health Mondays, but again, mental health is very serious. That's the point of this podcast, as well as the about the things that you have written on. You got interested in mental health a long time ago. What kind of piqued your interest in mental health and helping others?
Well, being mentally ill, I guess.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah, when you're crazy to start off with, if you can use that word. No, I was raised in a very abusive household by one of the parents, and by the time I was, getting to be of age of driving and things of that nature, I was pretty much housebound agoraphobic. I had severe, back when it wasn't cool. Like now, you could be agoraphobic and have panic attacks and be depressed, and people are like, "No, man, I get you, I feel you." Back then, because like I said, we were discussing before the show, we're in a different age group.
Yeah,
it wasn't cool for us.
Nope.
So so I went through the whole guinea pig phase. Actually, I was the one that doctors tried the medicines on and whatnot. So that's what got me interested. And then I beat it. I used some things and got away from some things that might offend some people and might help some people. That I got away from it, and now I do everything I possibly can in my power to help people that have anxiety or depression.
Did you feel like a guinea pig when they were trying different medications on you? And where do you stand on medication in regards to mental health?
That's a loaded question. I was actually told I was a guinea pig. My general practitioner at the time was like, he was like, I've discussed it with 4 other doctors who'd never even had a patient that was agoraphobic. They didn't even know what to call it at first.
Oh, wow.
So I was one of the first people prescribed Paxil, and I had a unique I'm not going to go there. I had a unique side effect from Paxil that was incredible. Well, we shouldn't talk about that one.
Okay, all right.
And it turns the show X-rated.
Oh wow! So this is definitely Fear and Loathing in Alabama.
Yeah. So I was one of the first people to try Paxil for anxiety from where I'm from. So, but as far as there are definitely people. I have an ex who committed suicide on the phone with me, who was hospitalized many, many times. And I couldn't help her. There was nothing to do. I guess it was kind of a bad situation, me wanting to help her. But she definitely, and there are a lot of people who definitely can benefit from medications.
Yeah.
And I've seen the use of medications that aren't prescribed that often. Like, are we allowed to name brands?
Sure, I mean, absolutely.
But the Klonopins, you can get these Xanax, that kind of thing, can, for short term, to get somebody out the door to see a doctor or to see somebody.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. But I really, as a long term effect, I don't think that. And here we go. I don't think that Western therapy or most medicines are going to be effective long term and the goals that most people would like to meet as far as quality of life.
You mentioned Western therapy. How does that compare to other kinds of therapy?
Well, Western therapy, here we're going to go into a little rabbit hole here. Western therapy used some things from Zen and Buddhism, and they pick and choose from several places there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of turned it into, well, we got to make this pill fit everybody. And you make that's a tremendous mistake to make. Whereas there's a lot more help available here and in Britain too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's religious based, which can be scary as well. A lot of people that I deal with personally are people who are deeply spiritual Christian and of that nature. And so I think they just kind of pick and chose and cherry picked and turned it into something they could be repeatable.
Yeah.
And it's putting it, mental health isn't one size fit all. I think we find that out the further you try to look into it.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, it hasn't been effective. We know it hasn't been effective. We know that therapy is a repeat business.
Yeah, you don't want to lose the customer. If you cure the customer, you lose the customer.
Yeah, and every time I say that, I always get a few 20, 25-year-old women, not to to categorize, who are always saying something back to me like, I have a friend, and she's a therapist, and she has a party every time one of her people graduates. And it's like, yep, there's like 3 people waiting on that spot. And she may have left because she was going to a different therapist, because I see a lot of that. I have a lot of people who come to me and I work with them for 3 months and they're pretty much done.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wow, I've been through 20 therapists. I'm like, well, for one, why are you going through so many? Which it just leads to some incredible stories, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And some just unprofessional stories. And then they go, well, why am I successful? And it's not me. I'm not being successful. You already have everything you need to be mentally healthy. You just kind of have to be guided that way. So,
well, it's kind of like, if you think about it, like McDonald's, most of the menu at McDonald's, pretty much everything on the menu at McDonald's, even the salads, are terrible for you. And yet it's one of the it's probably the most successful, popular fast food brand out there. Because it's not because it's healthy. It's not, people aren't going to McDonald's because they want to eat better. So you can almost use that as I don't know. Does that parallel kind of the thing about you can't necessarily judge a therapy as successful because it makes you feel good.
No, that's actually, to me, that's quite the opposite. If it makes you feel good instantly,
you're not doing the work.
You're not doing the work. And on top of that, it's kind of funny because I got in trouble one time. The only time I've been sued in this whole entire fiasco was, and I'm going to use the word here, I don't care, but because as long as I don't write it down, I'm fine. But I refer to Western therapy as McBuddhism.
Interesting.
And they nailed me on that one. They nailed me on that one. I wrote it down and they nailed me on that. It pretty much cost me that huge blog originally, that and making one stupid comment that I shouldn't have made, and I had to take it down. So, but yeah, that is Western. That was a very good analogy. That is Western. Well, you know what? I'm going to stop saying Western. That's nowadays, from what I'm hearing, that's worldwide, because they're taking their cues from us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be therapy worldwide at this point.
Say modern therapy versus
there you
more
go.
Traditional. Is that a better analogy? Because it's interesting too, because when you say Western, like nowadays, like especially in the last few years, what is Western? Because it almost seems like there's they're very polar opposite thoughts. There's almost this global thought versus like some people are almost going back to, hey, wait a second, I'm not sure I'm embracing this mentality of global versus what has worked in the past in education. And not to go off on another rabbit hole, but as a teacher myself, one of my biggest frustrations is when these people that have never been in a classroom or have been in a classroom for decades come in with these new ideas that really aren't new ideas, but they're not really based on any real evidence or any real data. They just say the scientists have said, and then but the teachers who have been doing this for years and decades know what works, know what doesn't. And I think we've gotten to this philosophy, not just with teaching and education, but even I think in general with raising children, is we a lot of people associate disequilibrium as abuse. I mean, and a lot of abuse survivors will actually protest. They're like, no, you want to know about abuse? Let me tell you about how I grew up. But like the learning and growth takes place in that disequilibrium. And that's what, like, it's the same as, oh, here's a math problem, puts you in disequilibrium. You've got to figure out how to get back here. Life lessons are that same thing, I feel. And I think sometimes we want to do it for them. We want to make the stop. We're so afraid of hurting a kid's feelings that we don't realize that that's part of the growing pains of growing up, of growth process. But then you don't want to swing the other direction where it does get into abuse. Do you see what I'm saying? And I'm not sure where that line is.
I mean, you're saying that perfectly. There was a time frame in America. We'll stay here for a second,
Mm-hmm.
where you had, and you might have had the same thing. I had a very tough dad. You're a railroad guy. Honestly, he took one day off work in 47 years, and that was when I was born.
Wow.
I'm getting to your point here. One time he cut his toe off in his boot at work, duct taped it up, and stayed until he could come home so that his, probably shouldn't be telling this story. He's dead now he's been dead for a while.
Yeah.
But so that he could his crew could maintain their safety record and get free steaks.
Wow.
So some of us were raised in that hard, profanity was hard-assed,
Yeah.
atmosphere, and then it kind of turned over, and now everybody's getting participation trophies.
Yeah.
So I think the problem with all this, and by the way, I wanted to be a history teacher. That's what my education was. I really did. It was my lifelong dream. I don't know why I gave it up, but is that there's a certain, in therapy and in education too, and you can tell me if this is true or not. It seems like we put way too much emphasis on that somebody has to be comfortable, and I've never seen anything good come out of being comfortable. Every progress made has to come from a place of discomfort.
Yeah, was it the mother of invention is necessity, and you kind of, yeah, and I found like I have to put myself in disequilibrium sometimes just to get going. Like it's kind of, and even on the small scale of, all right, just get in the shower before your body knows you're in there. But now I'm in the shower, now I'm starting my day, and boom, and I get productive. But instead of sitting there, but you're right. But the one of the misconceptions a lot of people have in education is that the teachers are the problem. The teachers are trying. The teachers are the ones that are there that care for the kids, and in fact that caring for the children, for teaching them, wanting them to grow, is used against us to keep us in a profession that we're beat down, paid less, and bullied by an administration that doesn't understand what they're doing, but and almost they push an agenda, whether it's regardless of political affiliation, because it's both sides. You get a very right wingish agenda one way, you get a left wingish agenda another way. It's not the teachers pushing the agenda. In fact, if anything, we're closing the door and going rogue to try to teach kids. We don't care about agendas. We want the kids to be prepared for life. We want them to learn, the math skills they need, be able to read, but most often we want them to be critical thinkers. And unfortunately, the governments, the education departments, they don't want to develop critical thinkers. They want comfortable customers that aren't able to care for themselves and will need government assistance to tell them what to do, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and I'm not trying to be trite here, but that's one of the reasons I didn't go into teaching, because I had so many friends, we were in the same classes, and they were ahead of me, and they graduated, became teachers. And I remember one in particular, she was like, you can't choose your school. And she was like, I'm not going to be a teacher because they keep pushing me towards the worst schools, and they're putting agendas on me that I don't want to bring in the classroom. I see no place in the classroom. I'm here to teach a certain subject. Her subject was English, I believe. No, it was mathematics. It was math. She was a math teacher. I don't know what you are. I'm sorry.
I was actually an elementary school teacher, and I taught everything. So
you had the blocks of everything.
I had the whole thing. Yeah.
She wanted to be a high school teacher, and like the day before she started, like students were killing each other and killed a teacher.
Mm.
And so she was like, I'm not doing this. And she's like, and she even went and spent her own money and built her classroom up. I'm sure you know what that's like, and all that kind of stuff, because they spend their own cash. I think teachers, and I don't have anything to pander to you. You're not going to write me a check. But teachers are probably the most unsung. Now you get the bad ones. You get the ones that you see on like libs of TikTok and that kind of stuff. They exist. But as a whole, as a group, these people, such as yourself, actually did want to do something good. And I believe that opportunity is taken from them daily.
Mm-hmm. I actually left the classroom because of a lot of, it's like a bunch of straws on the camel's back. And, it's one of those things where you're prevented from being the awesome teacher that you are. The kids aren't going to remember their test score. They're not going to remember the pep rally. They're not going to remember these things that are superfluous. They're not going to remember these things. What they're going to remember is the experience and how they felt and how they grew, how they felt as a student in your classroom, and how the things that opened their mind. Like, wow, I got to do this really cool experiment with ice, or I got to do this magnet experiment, or wow, we got to virtually go to the pyramids with these goggles. Those cool things. And I think what happens is when there's so much being pushed as far as the importance of test scores, and you have people that are not qualified to make the decisions, but they're promoted above their own competency, and so they're making decisions. They're making decisions that aren't making sense. And what's frustrating is we're really hurting the kids. We're hurting our children by convincing, like by telling them that you are right to be, you should be comfortable, and you should be, we want you to, we don't care about you learning. We'd rather you not cry, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, we want you to be in a safe place. We don't want to educate you.
Yeah.
And since you're out of the profession, I'll say this comment, and I've said it many times before and written it many times before. The public education system, the American public, was the greatest boondoggle that we've ever had. It's the biggest waste of money we've ever had. And the most racist program, and one of the awful programs, was a free lunch program we've ever had. I mean, two of the things that we spent the most money on and got the least out of have been public education and the programs therein.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's none of it's conducive, since I see the little headline on top of what Mental Health Monday, none of it is conducive to the mental health of these kids either.
No.
You're not, no, so no longer are you're educating, you're actually misguiding them.
You're setting them up for failure.
You're setting them up for failure. You're setting them up for further pain. You're setting them up to come to guys like me.
You're exactly. And now my conspiracy, not going to say conspiracy, but then there's a very cynical take I'm going to give you in a second, and you might even be going there with that, but just kind of backing up there, is we're setting these kids up for failure, because what's going to happen when that kid becomes an adult? They get pulled over for running a red light. The cop pulls them over and they say, "Hey, you're embarrassing me in front of my peers. I'm harmed." You're like, well, wait, no, you ran a red light. We're pulling you over to give you a ticket. We're teaching kids, and now in school, that the world is going to bend to their needs, their wants, not even needs, their wants. And then they get out into the world, and the world kicks their teeth in. They have zero coping skills. We have kids now where, even in the 10 years from when I first started teaching to when more recently, the last couple generations of kids had zero coping skills. They didn't have they couldn't, some of them couldn't tie their shoes, but that was a different thing. But they didn't understand conflict resolution as much, and there was a lot more done for them rather than them figuring stuff out themselves. And we are setting these kids up, but then you combine that, not like by not focusing on setting these kids up for failure, but also with the pharmaceutical industry, which is really kind of becoming very, almost greedy to a point where they want to assign as many, not saying that, and I think you'll agree with, not saying that medication is good for a lot of people, depending if it's done right, if it's the right match. But like, as far as medication just to keep a customer going, to not cure the patient, but just keep them on the as an income, I wonder if that's the same with mental health too. If we we don't want to create healthy-minded individuals, because then they don't become future customers that need therapy and that are dependent on certain government organizations to tell them what to do. Did any of that make sense?
It made perfect sense, and it's too logical, so nobody will like it.
I'm
I could give you.
sorry. Sorry for the logic, everybody. I
Yeah,
apologize.
you went rational, so
Let's
there you
talk
go.
Taylor Swift now.
You just lost a whole bunch of customers. I don't necessarily. I don't know that the people are bright enough to the people that you're talking about and the powers that be. I don't think they're bright enough to be that forward thinking. I don't think they're being able to say, "Hey, we're putting them on the medications so that we can keep them
You're
on
right.
the medications." I think,
Palin's razor. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a level where we went. Okay, this is the acceptable baseline for life, and we keep dropping that baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Keep dropping that baseline, and that's leading to a less quality filled life.
Yeah.
A life less led. How about that?
Yep.
But to your point about you mentioning the kids that couldn't tie their shoes, I work for several sports outlets, not just Sports Illustrated. So like ESPN, SSN, a couple things like that.
Nice.
So I want to be able to say this without going, "Hey, I did this for Sports Illustrated." But exactly a year ago, this is kind of what made me stop doing the sports thing to a point. There's a lot of reasons, but this is one of them. I was trying to interview kids who were coming out of high school, going to college sports.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're rated. This is purely football. They're star rated. I'm sure you're familiar with the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get anybody to respond to me on social media. Nobody wanted to be interviewed like you and I are talking right now. So I was like, okay. So I sat down and I came up with this critical thinking, came up with a plan, and formed a questionnaire. I sent the questionnaire out to a few of these kids who were just, they had 7, 8 colleges talking to them.
Yep.
It never occurred in my mind that some of them couldn't read.
Yeah.
And there was 2 interviews in particular. One was a 5-star who is making bank right now, who's making a ton of money, who his dad had to sit. We finally did get on the interview, and I promised not to report the video of it. I just did the audio. And the dad had to read the questions to the son. And basically, even though, like I said, there's no way to make this not sound racist. But I mean, he wasn't Mexican, he was American. So he should be able to speak English, especially as a graduating, senior. He was ununderstandable. I don't know how he was going through these interviews with these coaches, and he couldn't understand basic concepts. And here he is.
And how does our education system promote someone and say, "Here's your degree"?
I literally asked his father. I said, "I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to use this at all. I'm going to destroy this." And I realized this, but I asked his father. I was like, "How the heck did he pass his high school equivalency?" I said, "No offense." And his father never got mad the whole time. The father was like, "I don't know, but the boy can play ball." That was the answer. Mm-hmm. And so, and this isn't movie stuff. I'm just a dude from Alabama talking to, kids. I'm not going to say from where. I'm not going to let anybody be able to narrow anyone down, but there was 2 of them that literally could not read. And I don't mean bad reading comprehension. They could not read. And one of them, I spoke to one who, once again, there's no point naming a star or location there, who was so emotionally disturbed by the process that he had noise canceling headphones on. And he's not, I have an autistic child, you know that.
Yeah.
He didn't have anything that was diagnosable, we'll say that. But he was so delicate. Can we use that word?
Yeah.
And we're talking about a player that he's fixing to play SEC football. And he was so delicate that he couldn't handle an interview that was a softball interview. I'm not drilling these kids, man. I'm just trying to get, anything you can print for these kids it's just wonderful. People eat it up.
Fluff piece, if you will.
They're truly fluff pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best word for them. You're not trying to get like breaking news out of these kids or anything. I'm not even pushing to see what's cool. Obviously, I'm like, I hope you go to Auburn. But I'm not pushing it. I'm just saying, profile stories.
Yeah.
And they can't handle that. I'm like, you can't handle. In my mind, I'm thinking you can't. I was like, man, I could work with you. I could work with you so much. Give me a couple of months. I can turn you in. We can change this. There's no interest in change.
Yeah.
And,
Why?
and you know that too. Why? Because it can
Yeah.
be taken care of. The government is going to take care of you. You have a reason, an excuse. That's what you said earlier when you were talking about you gave the analogy of the guy getting pulled over at the red light.
Yeah.
And not you have a built-in excuse for anything you do in life. And I've seen that so many times. It's disturbing to me. But I mean, you can only help who wants to be helped.
And it's all like chaff. If you're familiar with the military term chaff, where when the heat-seeking missiles coming at you and they throw the heat stuff out there to distract. It's the social equivalent of that, where we, like, for example, we have a school board member whose granddaughter is in private school. She moved her to private school because she didn't trust the school system that she's in charge of. Like, and it was like, but she's not doing anything to try to make the changes. And that's just one example. But the the thing that really has just blackened my heart, and a lot of teachers too, is the overdiagnosis of IEPs, educational plans, and the overdiagnosis of autism. Because autism itself, and I've actually had I've had one person with autism on. I've had a couple of them on the podcast, and I've had parents of autistic children, yourself included. There's a difference between a truly autistic child and on the spectrum, wherever that is, versus someone that just it's almost like a diagnosis just to cover their behavior challenges or cover their delicateness, if you will. And the other thing is, then on the flip side is this incessant desire to hold these kids to, like, these, to not provide the services that they really need, and to provide the diagnosis that you really need to give them, but then promote them and tell them, oh yeah, you know how to do fifth grade math, even though they can't even spell their own name, or they can't even add 2 + 2, but we still promote them because I think part of that is the mentality of how we look at education. Yeah, exactly. They don't want they need you. They need you to be a number so that the money can be there. I hate to. I mean, as somebody that's been in the trenches, I still teach virtual teaching, but as somebody that's been in the classroom for just about over a decade, I can agree with you that the current state of our education system is a joke, and it's babysitting, and it's basically set up at this point just to facilitate the next crop of consumers.
And let's segue that into what we were originally talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same. Everything we just talked about is exactly the same as the therapy situation is right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have an inundation of therapists who have no life experience. You have a lot of therapists who have taken a little class in counseling and think they know something. They're not basing it on anything, and they're just they don't want to offend anybody, and they want to give the same lessons to everybody, and they want to have people have a safe place. They want people to be comfortable. It's the same as the educational system we're discussing right now.
Absolutely. And the best leaders of an AA group or a drug abuse group are former drug addicts and and alcoholics.
I'll tell you one better out there than that is that the person, like I've been, how they put your name out in front at conferences, like this is a Zen expert and stuff. And you said it the first, and I kind of laughed at it. Like, I think the person who speaks the best Zen, American English right now, is an NA guy. His name's Paul Hederman. I'm not going to advertise. I mean, we're friends. I know him. We're not friends, but I know him. We've spoken. Obviously, you run across each other. This is not a large profession. But he's an NA guy. He is an addict. He is an alcoholic. And he uses Zen, and he is cured more. I say cured because they say it's incurable. But he has got more people with more days, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
And he has a YouTube channel. If there's anybody out there struggling with alcohol or drugs right now, I'll throw him a bone. I think because we want to help, right?
Absolutely.
But he runs a YouTube channel called Zen Bitch Slap.
Great name.
And you'll never know it's the end. You'll never know, and you probably, man, first time you listen to it, you won't understand a word of it. But if you go back to his earlier stuff and come back, he can help you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're just having problems, he can help you. And please don't misconstrue anything here. You can be a Christian and be Zen too.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn from Zen. How about that? We'll say that. And so you don't bring religion into it, unless religion is what's bothering you, which I have seen a lot of people with that problem. They have a lot of guilt, and so you have to break through that before you can to move on to different things. But anyway, Paul Hederman, don't read his book. His book is awful.
Yeah.
It's yeah, but if you want to go and if you need some help, and especially with the alcohol and drugs, if there's anybody out there listening, I mean, he's a guy, man. You'd love to sit and watch YouTube stuff. He's the man for
Paul Hederman, Zen bitch slap.
Yeah, and definitely, like, he is one of the ones I listen to, and I'm like, whoa, because it's so hard to put into words. People don't understand how hard Zen is, and I'm like, wow, this guy's got it, and he's saying it. Nobody's going to get it, and he knows people aren't going to get it. He's like, I'm talking above your head and hoping that something lands someday. But you just like you mentioned, the AA guys and AA guys, they're the ones, and they're tough. You know this. You've heard these guys speak.
Yeah.
They're not being gentle with these people.
No.
The successful ones aren't. The one that speak and have guys who have years under their belt of being clean. Their guys teaching them are not, or they're women too. I'm not being sexist there. Mm-hmm. They're not the softies that we're talking about.
Mm-mm. Because they've been there. They know. They've been there.
Yeah.
You brought up also Christianity, and sometimes people having problems with Christianity, and a couple of the things I've noticed is being a Christian versus being a Christian in your face. And I think a lot of people, when you really diagnose the problems that people have with Christianity, it's not the actual Christianity, it's the human aspect of it. It's how humans have bastardized in some ways or abuse religion. Like, it always bothered me that when I would see, like, I would go to a bar, and on the corner of the street, you'd see this guy with his two sons with Bibles, he's shouting at everybody saying, "You're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell by going in there." And then I'm looking at him and I'm like, that's not how you attract people to listen to the word of God.
It's inefficient. That's for sure. It is inefficient because it doesn't make you want to drink more.
No, you actually like, oh man, hey, maybe you guys need to drink. But the guy that goes in, sits at the bar and talks to everybody and listens, and then starts to and not doesn't push it in people's, but has those conversations as a real person, are much more effective of sharing Christianity, or regardless, maybe not even like a religious standpoint, but you don't sell. You rarely can get a sale with somebody by smacking them in the face, but and I'm not saying that's not a knock at Zen bitch slap, but I always find that the more understanding you are, then the more effective it is. But then I think the problem is people mistake being understanding. They mistake it for being an enabler. Where like there's a strong difference, and it's subtle, but it's strong. I will say, and countless parents and kids will attest to this, that I was a very effective behavior management teacher. My classroom was kids didn't want to leave my class. They were bummed when a sub was there. And of course, they always you always get punished for being effective at your job. They always put the real terrible kids in my class, but they get to me. They would say terrible kids. They'd get to me, and I'm like, I don't understand. I see this kid is hyper. He's got this, but I don't see why rarely did I see what they saw. Sometimes I did. Sometimes, like, yeah, I can see this guy's going to be a project for me this year. But it's when you look at the person, you understand them, and you understand what makes them click, and you use that positive reinforcement, and there is some manipulation, you get the most out of them. But there's a difference between being kind and being nice, and this is something that Stephanie brought up in a conversation we had a while back, and where if you're being nice is almost enabling, where it's like someone has a booger in their nose, you ignore the booger and you just talk to them, and you don't want them upset. Like, I want to be nice. Okay. Oh, that's not how we talk to people. We don't stab them with pencils. Kind is is being is telling them the hard truth, and also why it's good for them, and making sure they understand that this is good for them. And that's when you pull them aside. That's when you have that. That's like in the case of the booger, you pull that person aside and say, hey, you've got a booger in your nose. Here's a napkin, or here, this is what you need. And I think what's happened in a lot of, yeah, exactly, a lot of education. I wasn't talking about you, but and a lot of education, a lot of parenting is we're back to that, worried about making them cry, when you need to tell them the hard truth, if that makes any sense.
All right, it makes a lot of sense. And I always harken when somebody brings this up to me, they go, well, Zen is such a peaceful thing, or Stoicism is such a peaceful thing. I'm like, well, what the hell are you reading? I mean, Zen, like one of the most famous Zen stories is, I'll keep all these short, I promise you, but is about the monk who points at the moon. That's his answer. When somebody comes and asks him, what is Zen? He would just point at the moon. And it turned into a finger pointing towards the moon. You may have heard that phrase before.
I actually haven't, but that's interesting. Tell me
Zen,
more.
Zen is a finger pointing towards the moon. And he had a student. Oh, he had several students. He was a master. I've had students. A lot of them have students,
Yeah.
obviously. One doesn't, which is we should bring up later. But he called his student one day. His student thought he wasn't there. And somebody asked a student, somebody just come up and, somebody looked seeking the truth and said, what is Zen? And he caught his student copying him. He immediately, and this is a true story, there's documented, there's a place where this finger still exists. The Zen master wrestles him to the ground and cuts his finger off. Now that's nice. I mean, it was brutal. It's still brutal. I promise you. I studied in the Soto Zen 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I don't want to date myself too hard. And it was brutal then.
Yeah.
You get hit with sticks. I mean, it hurts. Not even for making mistakes. They just to get your attention.
Pai Mei from Kill Bill type stuff,
Yeah, but I mean, it really. And Zen, they're like, why aren't you more pleasant? Why aren't you kinder? Why aren't you nicer? And I'm like, have you met anybody who's actually a Zen master, or met anybody who's actually studied Zen? Kindness is if not truth. If you don't feel kind, then you're faking it. And so I'm gonna go back to what we were talking about.
Well, real quick, can I just I think sometimes people think niceness is kindness. Like, I think true kindness is being able to say the hard thing, like if somebody stinks, somebody's got body odor, and a kind move is to pull them aside and tell them that they need this. Rather, their niceness is where everybody thinks, everybody's getting along and no one's upset. I don't know if that's the right definition, but I think sometimes people forget, or they think sometimes they call things that are nice kind, or enabling as kindness, when you're really not being kind.
I don't think I must have made my point. I didn't get there. I got Zen distracted.
Oh, no.
No, yeah, that's my bad. But I think kindness and niceness both are overrated. I see what you're saying. I see how you're trying to separate. I think they're both overrated. And I learned that from the way I was taught. Not from my father, but that too. But in the Zen world, in the Stoic world, and also in the business world for me. Like I said, I retired at 36 from the steel industry. I worked in the steel industry. And I actually had this is so embarrassing. I'm not going to mention a name. I had a fellow who worked for me who did stink constantly. He wouldn't bathe. And no, I didn't pull him aside. I didn't say, hey, buddy. I got HR on my butt. Look, we talked to him 3 times and he still is offending. And I stood, we were at the beginning of the shift. I would tell everybody what to go do. At this point in time, I was director of operations. And so in that meeting where the whole staff, I was like, so-and-so, you stink. You're bothering your other employees. You need to fix it. You need to correct it. If I can help you correct it, tell me. Now go to work. And that was pretty much the tone I used. I've never been a screamer or anything like that. It's not
Yeah.
in my nature.
It's direct. Just say.
Now I've thrown tools before, and I promise you, when you're angry at something. But he came to me about 40 minutes later and was like, "I can't afford." It's like, "You can't afford what?" And he was like, "I'm so tight on bills, I can't afford, things, the deodorant, the soaps, and all the stuff."
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? I left work, got in my car, went to Dollar General, bought him all the stuff, brought it back, problem solved. HR had been dragging him along, being kind and
Yep.
nice, different
Being
times,
nice.
and just being blunt. And so I'm a real big believer in bluntness. And the article that I've written a bunch. I've had 70 million views. I don't even know now on some articles. The one that's been reprinted the most, and it's even been reprinted with other authors. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
All right.
Oh yeah, but was an article called "How to Stop Hating Yourself," and it was this lovely young girl. She was a young woman at the time, and now she's grown with 2 kids. That shows you how old I am. But she literally came up with the question, and she was I'm not going to name off. You'll just say deeply spiritual Christian, raised in a very strict Christian home. And she was just in college, and she wasn't handling college very well. And she came and she said, I said, "What can I do for you?" And she goes, "Can you please teach me to stop hating myself?"
Wow.
Yeah, it took me about 30 minutes to recover from that, because it was legitimate. It was a cry for help. And here was this very beautiful, put together, well-spoken, intelligent young lady who had led what most people would consider to be a great life. And I asked her to do one thing. That's the only thing I could come up with. I was like, "What's the problem?" And she says, "I feel so guilty." And I'm like, "Why do you feel guilty?" She said, "I can't meet my parents' standards." I'm like, "You're not living your parents' life. You're living your life."
Yeah. Oh, that's.
I was like, I see your grades, man. You're here. You're there. So what's the issue? And she's like, "Well," and she came up with a whole bunch of things, and it all revolved around how she felt about the religion and what the religion was telling her. And so I said, "Do me a favor." I said, "Go home for a week. Go home right now, pray, and say, 'God, I'm not going to talk to you for a week. I'm going to take a week and do something for myself. And then I'll talk to you in a week.'" And I said, "See if you can do it." And she came back and she said, "I learned something." And I went, "What?" And she said, "I couldn't do it." She said, "I was addicted to feeling that way. I was addicted to feeling
Interesting.
that challenge." She said, that was what was keeping me doing all these things. Like, "Well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do to make you happy?" And she's like, "I have no idea." And I was like, "Well, just don't be stupid." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I was like, "That's what, Christianity really is." I mean, I've read the Bible so many times. It's bad at this point. I know more about the Bible. I know more about most anything because I've studied it so much. But people have twisted it. You know that. You mentioned it. It's the people. And if you really break down the New Testament, Paul was a Stoic. We're not going to get too deep into this. Paul was a Stoic. We can argue back and forth about the Gospels and everything. But it basically is, if you sum it down, just don't be stupid. Don't do stupid things. Don't be a jerk. And don't be stupid. That's what I told her. I was like, "You have a good head on your shoulders. Don't be a jerk. Don't be stupid."
Yeah.
She came back 2 more times. And then I get a Christmas card from her every year.
Oh, wow.
She has 2 kids. She's extremely happy. Her parents disowned her for like 6 months. She
Right.
walked away from the church, but she's so spiritually connected now. And she's so
She's
much
probably
happier.
stronger
Oh, yeah.
in her spiritual connection, that she shed off all the dogma, if you will.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it really wasn't even her dogma. She was carrying her parents' dogma. And when she actually started seeking out, like, she didn't change religions. She said, "I'm not going to go to the same church my parents go to." And she found one that suited her needs. And, I don't go to church anymore. I haven't been to church since I was 20 or so. And to a Christian church. And, but she worked it out for herself. She had the ability because she did have good parents. I'm not saying her parents were bad. This was a really well-raised young lady. She had the foundation. They just kept piling on it, and the building was toppling over.
Yeah.
So there's a point where you can do what you were talking about, and you can take these students who are problem students that get shoved up on special needs teachers a lot.
Yeah.
And you know that. And you just try to build a foundation. If you're raising a kid right now, like I'm raising my kid, obviously,
Mhm.
and they brought to me and they were like, well, we want to do this, this, and this. And I was like, well, no, we're going to go hard on him. Well, he can only handle like 8 hours a week because and I was like, he's been in therapy or some sort of therapy since he's 3 months old. I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to get after it. And I finally found a very expensive place and put him in it. And they were like, let's just go crazy. Let's do 8 hours a day. Like, with a 4-year-old? And they were like, yeah, he can do it. And I was like, show me. And they've shown me. He went from nonverbal to he has about 17 words now in a couple of months.
Wow.
He went to, I mean, there were so many behavioral changes just from challenged.
Yeah.
And that's what I really wanted to get back to. That's where I was circling back around with the kind, nice, and all that stuff we were talking about, is that you have to challenge somebody in order to get something out of somebody.
Very true. Very true. I mean, I always go back to, we are stimulus response creatures by nature. I mean, we have skin for a reason. You know, that for those first developmental years when you're that, baby, like this, you're learning because you're interacting with your environment. I learned what hot means because I crawled over and touched my mom's iron while she was there, that kind of stuff. But it's like, yeah, that's how you grow. You like pains and disequilibrium, like you said. That's what we are, and I think that's what you almost. It's almost like a mental health crisis occurs when you're not being challenged. Does that
Definitely.
fit?
Wow, that's really well said. And by the way, for the people who are just listening to this podcast, you should really come watch the videos to see his impression of a baby. that was worth the price of admission right there. It is perfect.
That's gonna be in the
that should be the
short.
Yeah, that should be the the short as well as the thumbnail.
And we won't get into the diaper spa up in New England, so we won't get into that topic at all.
But with switching gears, we've said a lot. We've kind of bashed a couple of things here, and people will go, well, that's negative. Well, is it negative or is it truthful? There's a discernment there, because I'm so sick and tired of getting these people who are perfectly healthy, who come to me and they believe that there's something wrong with them because they have a negative feeling. And a therapist has told them that's wrong. I was like, no, that's discernment. And they're like, we can't judge people. The Bible says not to judge people. Everybody says you can't judge anybody. You absolutely can judge somebody. That's part of your evolutionary ability, is to be able to judge a situation. Yeah. I mean, it's like you were talking about the skin earlier. Yeah. If you feel something is wrong, no matter what side you come down on it, then you should react to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you survive life, and that's how you build strength and build these calluses, like a guitar player. You build these calluses on your finger. You can build your calluses on your mind to not give these thoughts any credit. If somebody tells you, if somebody doesn't like you, then that's, oh well. I mean, who cares?
Yeah, there's a reason you feel that way too. Like when you feel an imbalance within yourself, there's a reason you feel. I love, my favorite Emerson quote is "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." And what I love about that is it's like, there's a reason you feel that way. And I used to tell kids, like, there's a difference between feeling angry and hitting somebody, because like hitting somebody is an action. Feeling angry, that's how you feel. Now you can dissect what made you feel angry and go back and figure out, okay, that made me angry. Why did it make me angry? Because this, and this, and this, and maybe next time I can take myself through, do the hard work, and realize blah blah blah. But being mad at yourself or feeling bad because you got angry is the same as going outside and it starts raining and then feeling bad that you got wet. Because now, what the difference is this: when you get wet, do you stay out in the rain? Do you go jump in a puddle? Or do you go inside and change your clothes and get a towel?
Wonderful.
Put an umbrella up? And I think that's the fundamental difference. A lot of people, I found this myself. I mean, it took me decades to, one, not stop living for others, my parents' approval, and my list of things I needed to accomplish to feel like I became a man, versus being like, hey, what brings me joy? What am I proud of? Who am I really? But also like feeling guilty for feelings I had when those were my feelings. Now it's the actions that you have to manage.
I teach that you can throw a stop sign up. Emotions mean absolutely nothing. They're just a thought. You can choose how you react to them, obviously. But if it's outside your dichotomy of control, you knew I was going to bring that up. If it's outside of your dichotomy of control,
Yep.
then, be like a dog, kick sand over it, move on.
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't matter. And the two biggest things I see people having problem with are legacy, which legacy, if you think about it, is one of the stupidest things. That's the reason it's part of my name. It's the reason it's down there, mindful legacy.
Mhm.
Because legacy is dumb. Legacy is trying to leave a future for something you can't. Now, I understand. I want to plant a tree where my kids can sit in the shade. I get it. But legacy, the actual act of trying to achieve a legacy, is about the same as trying to please your dead great-grandparents.
Mhm.
So, and by the time you're our ages, your parents are more than likely passed away or are close to it. I don't know what your situation is, but it takes a lot of people that length of time to go, oh man, I was trying to please somebody who was just as flawed as I am.
Yeah.
And then, so I just teach people the stupid things. I'm like, okay, here's what I want you to do. And people come to me and they're like, I want to learn how to meditate. I want to be peaceful. And I'm like, buddy, if you think meditation's peaceful, you were on the wrong cloud. I was like, let me tell you what to do. Go sit out on your front porch, set a timer for 5 minutes, and don't touch your phone for 5 minutes. If you can do that, not get back on your phone, not call anybody, text anybody, look at social media, not have any music going. If you can just go sit outside and look at the trees and the cars go by for 5 minutes, then come talk to me about being able to sit for meditation. Because when you go into meditation, it is not a passive experience. You have to go to battle with your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because your thoughts aren't real and they want to be the movie screen that runs through your head. Because in the movie that is your life, who's the most important character?
Yeah, you're the main character. You're the
if you believe there's a you, then you're the main character. Nobody else. Like if it was happening to somebody else, you wouldn't care, and nobody could write the thoughts that fast. You take the dumbest person, and then trust me, you and I know some dumb people. But if you take that process and go, how fast are your thoughts moving through your mind? It's still faster than anybody can write them, or anybody could say them. They fly. So just why get on the ride with them? Oh, did I just get? Yeah. Why get on the ride with them? Is sit like you're sitting on a bus, watch the thought, and don't get on the bus of that thought. Because thoughts mean nothing. They can't do anything. And you can pick and choose. Like, can I use you for example? You mind if I bring you out?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, if I tell you to solve a quantum equation for me, how difficult is that going to be for you?
Depends. I'll try it. I'll give it the old Myndrunner try.
I don't have one. I'm just saying. Let's say if I tried to get you to figure out something crazy like the physics of why a space shuttle does. You're a smart man. It's not fair. But if I picked out something,
I can. Yeah.
You do the best you could. It would be something you struggle with.
I'd use that forbidden skill called logic as best I could. I don't.
Or you'd use the internet. Something you would Google, get there. Yeah. Let's say you couldn't do any of those things. Well, then you would just not do them. What's the end result going to be?
No progress on doing. Yeah, if I choose not to try to solve it, then I wouldn't have any progress.
Okay, but what's the end result really going to be for all of us?
Nothing really. Right?
You're gonna die. You're gonna die. I don't care.
Oh, die! I mean, I'll eventually die and not have solved that. Yeah,
you're not going to solve it. You're going to die, and then guess what? It's probably going to be the same death as it was if you solved it. So nothing's that important.
Right in my deathbed, I solved it.
And then you're dead. And then what would it matter? You take it. There's this wonderful picture out there. It's like a maze where you could make two choices, but the maze always ends in death. And that sounds nihilistic, but it's true. It doesn't matter what you accomplish, what you don't accomplish.
None of us get out of here alive. So
yeah, but I'm gonna take it back to you. Now you couldn't solve the insolvable equation. We're gonna grant that notion. But if I go, hey man, can you go buy a pair of socks?
Yeah, online probably.
You're really good at getting what you need, aren't you? So why do you care about getting what you don't need?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people, and I call it this term close your ears, but I call it mental masturbation. There's a lot of people who engage in, and a lot of therapists who engage in, why does that thought exist? Why are you having that thought? Why do you feel this way? Why this and that? And the truth is, there is no reason for having a lot of thoughts. They're just there and they don't mean anything.
Well, it's like analyzing dreams sometimes. Like a lot of times I think dreams are really just your brain working out. You know, the neurons are fixing themselves and things just happen. That's why you're riding a giraffe, waving a spatula, chasing your third grade art teacher. You know,
I
like
got to hear more about these dreams. I might have new stories.
But I think that the thing is too, it's like a lot of times we like again, not naming names, but we had a school counselor, and she had two school counselors and these are from my old school. And the first one, all she would do was just for every student problem, she had a book for it. She had some children's book that was associated, and she would read the book and then walk away and then say, and the moral of the story is don't hit your friend if you want their sandwich. And then she would leave, and then she would go the rest of her day feeling like I cured that kid. And what does the kid do as soon as she gets up? Punches the kid and takes their sandwich. Yeah. Then there was
she's eating good.
And she's eating good. But then the new counselor came in, and she was one of those, bless her heart, her heart was in the right place. And again, I think a lot of folks, their heart is in the right place, but it's this snake oil kind of like, you know, hey, let's watch these are the characters from the movie Up, and these are your emotions. And so now we're going to talk about your emotions and why you blah, blah. But that's not operational. It's not functional from the standpoint of you're not going to why Billy hit Sally with his peanut butter sandwich. You know, you got to address that specific. You got to.
Are you hungry?
I know, right? Well, I don't know.
It's all food related, man.
Yeah, I think I might have to order some stuff. But what I'm saying is from an operational standpoint is I think that sometimes and I know I'm guilty of this a lot of times is I go down rabbit holes where I dwell on stuff that matters nothing, that impacts nothing, has nothing to do with the rest of my life. Like I'll sometimes just remember something I said in 5th grade and then embarrassed myself in the class. I'm like, why did I say that? But I can't go back and change it. I'm pretty happy with who I am now. So like, why that didn't affect my future much at all.
Bingo.
So why am I worried about that? Really, you'll get a kick out of this. For when I went through kind of that breaking away from my father. My father had a lot, like he had all these expectations. A lot of it really was him living vicariously through me. I have a great relationship with my father. In fact, when my parents divorced, I lived with him, and it was just he and I for about 2 years. And then he married my stepmother. And there's a whole other thing with that. But for so long of my life, he's had these expectations that in a lot of ways were unrealistic and kind of unfair for you to put on a kid. But it was also on me for not realizing, hey, I needed to find what was happy for me. So that's a whole separate thing. But I really had to kind of break away and find out who I was and what I really wanted to do rather than trying to be somebody I wasn't. And I had all this like angst and confusion. So the time I was working for a company that provided 5 free therapy sessions, counseling sessions with a therapist. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm really struggling. I need to go. And now here's what I'm saying is I highly recommend therapy. If you're struggling out there, please go seek somebody out. This is just my story. And this may be what you find. I went to this thing thinking I'm this mental wreck that there's something I'm losing my mind. The building that this therapist's office is in, as I walk in, I glance to the left and I see a bunch of people in a circle, and they look like the trash ran over them. And they're all sitting in a circle, some of them scratching. They all look disheveled and just like life has kicked them in the teeth twice and came back for seconds. And then I'm like, okay. Then I go up and I get in the waiting room, and I see visibly people that just look like they just walked out of the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I'm not trying to stereotype, but like they were clearly like one of them shaking and all this clear stuff. And then I go in, I sign in, I sit there for a while, and then they call me into the guy's office. And I sat there for 20 minutes telling this guy my problems, I almost put them to sleep. Like I almost like I even started laughing because I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, and not that I was like crazy, but like, compared to what this guy is seeing, my problems are almost a joke. Now, I'm not saying that they're not real problems and things for me to deal with, but it was one of those things where it's like, I probably got this more than I think I do. And so I don't know if that's, and I don't know if maybe I had a, right. I mean, comparison is the thief of joy. Everything's relative. But I think that was a moment for me where I realized that how okay I really was versus what I thought. Like I was worried about, I thought there was something wrong with me, and I am crazy, but of course you knew that. But as far as like compared to what's really going, what's real mental illness is, I'm actually doing okay.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect. I can relate completely because, like I said, I don't know if I'm losing track of what I mentioned to you privately and on here, but I was agoraphobic to the point where I couldn't go to the mailbox at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember years later where I was invited to speak at an actual psychiatric care in the hospital, ninth floor kind of deal. And I was like, okay, I can do this, man. I beat panic attacks. I have a panic attack here and there, but I beat agoraphobia, man. I'm really mentally ill. I mean, I handled it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
And I went to this place, and there were some people in there, and there was an orderly there, and he goes, "You're not for these people. You're for the white women." That's what he told me. He said we got some. He said the women 25 to 40 in here are the ones that you're looking for. And then they had one group, and I was like, okay, I want to go with this group. They were the people you were discussing just now.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist was like, yeah, go ahead. And he had this little, and the nurse
smirk
was like,
yeah,
the nurse was like, you go on over there and you have one of your chats. You go ahead and do that. And I'm not making jokes here.
I know.
I went over there, and there was people over there, and this, one lady had bitten through her wrist. And there were some people there, and you're like, okay, I'm fine. The fact that I had a few little panic attacks and stuff like that, I'm good. And I can help people like that. But there are people who do need the medication. There are people who do need to be beyond in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and I really, if you've never seen it, it's hard. Sorry. If you've never seen it, it's hard to imagine. Like I've seen people with such fast cycling bipolar disorder that you could be speaking to them like I'm speaking to you now, and their eyes would change. And they would start talking to their father that had been dead for 20 years. Their father had committed suicide in front of them. And like this wasn't a client of mine I was coaching or anything, so I feel comfortable discussing this.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen what true mental illness is. And I would comfortably say that 95% of the people who are on Mental Health Mondays or who are seeking help aren't that person.
Yeah.
And if you could just realize that you're not that person, and if I could just take you and show you how simple the world is, and that everything that's causing your problem, I've got to throw this word out here. I throw it out every time I speak. You're living in an invented reality.
Mm.
The guy that wrote Sapiens, I believe he calls it imagined reality, which great book, by the way.
I like
completely
invented, though.
Yeah, but invented reality, I think that's where I think that's one of my terms. And sometimes you get confused at what you come up with or what you've heard over the years.
Yeah, I've plagiarized a lot.
But. Yeah, but invented reality, if you think you're bad, then you're bad. Your problems are relative. Like you said, the thief of joy is what? Comparison.
Is comparison, yeah.
But if you could ever get somebody to stop and see for a second that everything you believe in isn't reality. Well, first you get a lot of nihilists.
I believe in nothing. Lebowski.
But if you can get past that and not become Walter or the nihilist, you can get somewhere in between there, or the dude. There's don't pick the guy that died either. Yeah, but it's a great movie. But if you can find the place where you can go, like, okay, see some examples. Human rights aren't a right; they don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
We gave them. We invented them.
Yeah.
I hear so many people who come in there and like, I have a constitutional right. No. It's great that you think that. And it's great that you're American and we can have that. But we all agreed to that. It wasn't a thing. So I mean, everything you talk about, everything that can upset you, political elections, which was our original topic that we discussed for doing, everything is invented reality. If you can
Yeah.
see past that, if you can see past the point that everything you feel like, if you feel angry, I did this just recently, and I want to bring it up because you made me study for it. But I had a client who was very upset and had very good reason to be about his cost of living adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
He's on disability and he has an autistic child as well. He is a younger fellow. And he was upset because his cost of living adjustment, he got like $117 raise. For one, I couldn't believe that he could live on what he was making, what the government decided he was worth.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this guy he made six figures several years too.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making nothing. Him and his child both make nothing. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But it was $117. And the reason I remember is because he brought me the letter and he goes, the food stamps went down $121 because my money went up $117. And I'm like, okay, well, you have a legitimate reason to be mad. And I was like, oh, this is a good teaching place for invented reality. But it really wasn't, because it wasn't invented reality because he was fixing to be starving.
Right? That's reality.
That's reality. But invented reality is like people who get upset. I had another client that come, and I'm going to talk about this, and I've asked permission, and no names, of course, who was incredibly having panic attacks, stressed out about Trump.
Wow.
We're not going to discuss any politics here as far as how we lean either way or the other.
Yeah.
Not the presentation for that. Completely stressed out about Trump. And I said, okay, what's stressing you out? And this person came up with about 15 reasons of why Trump being president was going to be awful for her. And they were all talking points, mainstream media talking.
Yeah.
And I went, I can cure you. And this person went, I've been dealing with this since he raced against Clinton. You can't cure me. I'm like, well, then why are you coming to me, for one thing? If you don't think I can help you, and
you can't cure me.
Yeah, well, I'm like, okay. And I was like, take your phone, take your TV, and don't do anything with them. Don't look at any media whatsoever, either side. Don't go to Newsmax, which I'm pretty sure they weren't going to. Don't go to CNN, which I'm pretty sure they were going to.
Yeah.
And no Twitter. Sorry, X. Nothing that has anything to do with politics. Nothing. And they said, come and tell me back in a week. And you see this as a repeating pattern here.
Yeah.
They came back and went, couldn't do it. So how long do you last? On the ride home. And I was like, well, did you not catch yourself? And
yeah.
Start, and it's like, and then start again. And I'll just go ahead and say, she was like, no, once I realized I couldn't do it, I just went ahead and looked. I couldn't. She said I was bored out of my mind. And I went, there you go.
Yeah.
That's why you're doing it.
There's the problem isn't Trump or Biden. The problem right there is the need for that dopamine.
And I get so many social media addicts. Sorry to interrupt there. I get so many social media addicts. And they're like, well, you're on Twitter, you're on X. And I was like, yeah, I had one account that was business related to one of the sports that had over 500,000 followers.
Yeah.
It's hard to go from that to what I am now. And they're like, well, you had to have been addicted to stuff. I was like, no, this stuff is fun for me. I have a good time. I meet good people. And the bad people, I just ignore.
Well, and that's an interesting point too. I want to go back to that that situation you're talking about. But I just had the episode that aired today with Debhausen. We're talking about how curating your social media to the point where there is something to what you ingest, what you consume, can positive or negative, can really influence your outlook, influence your schema on things. And if you're constantly going through and you're looking for those political rants, or you're looking for these things, they almost start to become part of you. And they key you up. They make you think the sky is falling. But if you shut off your phone, shut off TV, and you just live your life, and you'll find out your neighbors aren't trying to kill you. You find out you hope not. I mean, I don't know. We got one guy across the street here that's probably a little bit out there. But the other thing is it's like you find people that bring you joy, a positive experience, like-minded people. You joke around, and it doesn't mean that none of it's without issue, but I think that there is something to cultivating your online experience and making sure you're cognizant of how easy it is to get caught up in a lot of this stuff. Like, there's people I respect tremendously will suddenly go on some rant a political rant, and it's almost unhinged to the point where I'm reading it and I'm thinking that they're foaming at the mouth on something, and I'm like, this is an intelligent person that otherwise I can have a great conversation about Thoreau, or we can go into all kinds of stuff, but then they almost betray their own thought process when it comes to certain comments, and it's because I think sometimes we become so much a part of an idea that it becomes part of our identity, and we can't separate ourselves. That's, again, going back to teaching, why it's so important to teach scientific investigation, to know that your hypothesis is not you, and then if the data proves otherwise, a good scientist goes, well, my hypothesis was wrong, therefore my conclusion is Y, not X. But what I was going to say is that there's something to that, in that, recognizing what the actual issue is versus the symptom of the issue. And I see that with kids. I see that with like, we have my friend is still at the school that I used to work at, and there's a principal there, and she is incompetent, and she may even be like mentally challenged as far as being able to have, she's kind of unable to read the room, kind of thing. And he always gets upset about her, and I always say, well, read the room. I mean, she can't read the room, but think about it. She's a symptom of the real problem. The real problem is the education system having someone like that in that position. It's not her. She may be doing the best she can, she just is incompetent at what she's doing. And if you took her and put her in a data entry position, she might thrive, but she's just a misplaced person rather than being a jerkwad. And I think kind of goes back to the invented reality. A lot of times who we see, let's be honest, if we really break down who we are, we're like this system of nerves responding to these, like, to sight, sound, touch, all the five senses.
Stimuli, yeah.
And so our reality is how we interact with those senses. And again, we're getting to augmented realities in the next 10 years or so, already there. But that's still a construction. So like who I am to you and who you are to me is different than who your son sees you as and how my wife sees me. Those are two different things, but we're still the same person, if that makes sense. And then the other point I was going to say is that reality isn't, hey, the Constitution gives me this, or we all agree that murder is bad. Well, is murder bad when you tell the lion, hey, you just murdered the elk? I mean, do you put him in lion jail? No, that's life. And so I think sometimes we do kind of we forget that a lot of this stuff is an agreement to, if you want to live in society, you've got to follow this. But then there's the real world. I kind of went all over the place there, but
yeah, I mean, the first thing you discussed. Let me see if I can unwrap this, and then I'm going to try to gel it all back together, which is going to be interesting. But with the banana theory is what you were talking about originally, and what that is, I'm not even sure that's the proper term. It's the term I use for it. How about that?
I like it.
Is that you can take 1,000 people, or you, for instance, and I can go, okay, I can do it for you right now. You can picture, you've had a banana, right? You've eaten a banana before. Okay, so you know how banana tastes. So if I hand you a banana that's got some dark spots on it, it's really, really the dark yellow. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen it. You've tasted it.
Not quite banana bread ready, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. When you bite into it, what's it going to be?
It's going to be a little bit soggy, but it's going to taste like a banana. There's
the problem right there, is that everybody knows that and thinks they know that. Your brain is the worst operating system that's ever existed. Not yours personally. Human brains are they're very poor memory storage systems, and they're very poor operating systems. And so what you do, you file a category of information somewhere back there. And so it's always going to be the same for you. And most people can't come off that. Most people cannot intake new data and make a change. Now, I just named off a description for you, but that banana may not taste the same to me as it does to you.
Yep.
Like that may be when I love the banana.
Mm-hmm.
Or wouldn't it be crazy if you actually took a bite of the banana and that banana that you thought was the basic of banana bread, which was hilarious, by the way. But what if it was actually sour,
Yeah.
like a green banana? That's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
You've just ruled out those possibilities.
Based
So
on previous constructions.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
basing your reality on something that this is not like earlier you were discussing. You touched your mother's iron, and that's how you learn things are hot. Okay, well that's a good memory to have. That is a reality.
Yeah.
But a lot of things that you store as reality aren't reality. Like a certain person, that's where racism comes from. That's where sexism. That's where all this comes from.
Oh,
You were
just gonna go there. Absolutely.
you were taught that. So I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna kind of gel this all back together. What you just said, and I'll make it a little full circle here. So a lot of people who get stressed. We were going to talk about politics, but then we decided we're going on a different tangent.
We can
But
still go there, but go ahead.
I mean, no, I'm going to do it all at once
All
because
right.
it can be. You can link them all,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I keep trying to tell people. Everything's linkable. Everything has a segue, but everybody who's worried about and nervous about the overall election, do you possibly fathom how of little importance to your actual life the presidential election has been in the past, say, 75 years?
Mm-hmm.
That's from a history guy.
Yeah.
It is so it's the minutia of your existence. And I'll go as far as to say your gubernatorial election of your state. But the people who actually govern the most are the idiots that lead school boards.
Yep.
Are the idiots that are elected. If you are stressed out in life and you think you've got problems and you want to get involved in something, get involved in your local politics. You will feel better about yourself. You will do more for the community, which betters the community. And you could solve some of these problems that you think that you're worried about. And fourth, you might find out that you really don't give a crap about these problems. You just really wanted to have something to. What were we talking about? I'm going to switch here. I made the full circle. I feel like I need trying to choose my words here carefully, but
let them flow.
Everything I think that we're discussing so far, especially with the social media stuff and the political stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the reasons some people seek therapy right now are small little existential crises.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't know what to do with yourself. I wrote a thing about this just Sunday. A quote. It's actually an Alan Watts quote that is attributed to a female author because she used it in a book.
Mm-hmm.
There's millions of people on this planet that want immortality that don't know what to do with themselves for 5 minutes on a rainy Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, right.
And that's what it is. Because if you really sit down and you don't have anything in life, or if you have some bad things going on in life, like some people construe, I meet a lot of parents who are just so downtrodden because they have an autistic kid, and I'm like, mine's stage 3. We're not comparing. Blah blah blah. I think it's a joy. I didn't want kids. Mine was an oops. Mine was I had broken up with a lady, and we were like, okay, we've already paid for the Valentine's Day thing, so we're gonna go do it, and bingo, I have a kid.
Surprise.
Yeah, 42 years old, but 41 somewhere in there. I don't remember how old, but I could do the math, but math's not my strong suit. But a lot of it is you're just bored. You don't know what to do with your life. You don't know what to do with yourself. The only way you can feel excited anymore is by going further and further. And we find this one stays with pornography. We won't get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But you need more. You need more to finish yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm using that as an analogy here. It's probably a poor one, but you need more. You need more anger. You need more hate. You need more two sides. There has to be an absolute black and an absolute white. You need these things, and it becomes a drug for you because it's the only thing that gives your life meaning. And so if you can step away from that,
you have to have an antagonist of some kind.
You have to have a battle to fight, or you're not content. And also, I find this a lot. I say this because like I said earlier, I don't push Zen. I don't think the common person can learn Zen, even though you have it. You are Zen. You don't know it. Blah 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 blah. I could tell you all those things. I can beat you to the death with them. I think a person should learn Stoicism. It's easier. It gives you a more structured basis, and it doesn't take as long to learn, and it's not as complicated, and it's not meant to be as complicated. But people don't want to do that. People don't want to live in peace. People don't want to be able to sit. They don't want to be able to sit and face a wall for half an hour. People are always amazed. Oh, you can sit for and face a wall, dude. I can sit and face a wall for 8 hours. I've done it for 10.
I had to do that growing up. So
there you go. Yeah, I mean, and they're like, I don't see how you sit still and read a book, which blows my mind. I mean, I get that much. I get that a lot. I can't sit still and read a book. And I'm like, then why are you on Facebook talking to somebody's grandmother arguing about an election that doesn't matter to you?
Yeah.
You don't have to have this in your life. You're choosing. I'm going to sum that up by saying a lot of this is an existential crisis that you think that you're having to invent something so that your life has some meaning that you can tangibly hold.
Yeah.
Instead of just letting life flow and be truthful with yourself and say, hey, look, I'm 45 years old, 46 years old. I've had a heart attack. I've had open heart surgery. Got an autistic kid. You know, things probably aren't going to go another 40 years for me. You know, it's just, instead of being honest with yourself, if you say anything like that, people may go, oh, you're being negative. No, I'm being honest.
Yeah.
With myself, which people can't do. And until people can start, and that's what I try to train everybody that comes near me. Be honest with yourself. See the truth. It's not hard. And have a code, build a code for your life to do well and do right for yourself. And you won't have these issues. And it is like fighting tigers with a chair 9 times out of 10, because then they want to argue with you. You become their antagonist.
Yeah. Exactly. How much of this do you think is based in the like primitive human like instinct or innate, from the standpoint of the primitive human is always like you're ready for the other group to attack, so you've got to be protected. You've got to distinguish between which berries are poison, which berries are good. And I'm using just primitive examples. You know that the tribe over there with the red capes or whatever, those guys stay away from, because as soon as if you try to trade with them, they're going to attack. But the tribe over here with the blue capes, they're friendly. They'll share food with you. So you know, if you see a blue cape, you're gonna instantly feel better. And and that's such a primitive analogy, but I think that sometimes is innate, where when it comes to tribalism, but like where we feel like, and it goes back to that whole thing about the banana thing, is that we tend to make assumptions because of one experience. We make assumptions instead of, and it's like I always make this analogy that if you are a bank teller and you see on the news that there's that all these banks are being robbed by a guy wearing an orange baseball cap, and you see like it's all over the news, this guy with an orange baseball cap's running around, and then you're sitting there, you go to your job, you sit there, and then suddenly you see a guy walk in with an orange baseball cap. Could be completely different person, could be completely innocent, totally different situation. And yet immediately your hackles are going to go up because you're primed for that. And I think that's a primitive version of, I think, what happens a lot of times when people, it's that banana thing, is that they're almost ready. They're looking for the challenge. They're looking for the fight. And it's almost innate. Like they're looking for the antagonist. And let's be honest, any good book, it's boring until the antagonist shows up. What they used to say, the Bible is boring till the snake shows up, kind of thing, or that kind of thing.
That's a good. I hadn't heard that one. That's good.
Yeah,
I like that one.
I took that from a movie somewhere, but
I'm going to steal that one myself.
Yeah.
You're basically, what you're saying right now is actually Sociology 101. I cannot pronounce the author's name. I feel bad for it, but the book is called Sapiens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've read it or not.
But I actually haven't, but that sounds fascinating.
It is. It's wonderful. It's probably, the first half of that book is probably one of my top 5 books I've ever read. Because, like I said, I think I've mentioned it 3 times in this podcast. Wow. But he discusses that, the language, what you're discussing, from an actual sociologist, scientist standpoint. And he was like, language was developed to, just like you said, to go, those berries down there will give you the runs.
Mm-hmm.
However, everything else and all of civilization was developed on storytelling to keep people interested. it's very interesting how he actually plays that out and shows you that the factual how that built religions, how that built everything was that's how you could hold everybody together. That's how you could have communities. It's like you could basically just live life grunty and going, no, bad, no, good, yes, good.
I gotta tell you that one of my favorite lessons teaching the kids. I taught third grade for like 9 years, and we teach ancient civilizations, and we do all these really cool experiments. I tie in Minecraft with it. We do all this crazy stuff. When we get to the Empire of Mali, we talk about Sundiata, and we talk about Mansa Musa, and we talk about the griots of Mali, and those were the storytellers. They didn't have, even though they had this great library, their system of history was storytelling. And it wasn't like, history books, this is our thing. They would have griots, were these wise men, and who would tell their history. And naturally, human nature, you want everybody to listen. Well, what are you're gonna kind of embellish a little bit, And so what we did is, as a lesson, is I'd start the lesson, and I would tell this story. I'd gather them around, and I'd say, and I had this little tiny drum too that was really cool. I'd go, doo, doo, the griots of Mali. And then would go, I'd tell the story of Sundiata, and I'd say, Sundiata, he was born, and his wife, his mom he were cast out of the kingdom, and he went to the other kingdom, and became strong and came back. And I'd tell this whole story, and I'd all the main characters in it. And then I'd say, all right, who can tell me the story? And then I'd get another student to come up, and they would tell their version of the story. And I said, no, act it out. Go ahead, get it into it. Go for it. And it would be slightly different. And then the next kid, and it's almost like the telephone game.
Yeah, the telephone
By the
game.
time every student, they started adding jokes that got laughs. Like the kid, like when the kid talks about the sorcerer, he did this woo thing, and everybody laughs, and the next guy goes woo, and we laugh. And so the story at its core stayed the same, the basic like A to B plot. But the characters, the things that happen, the embellish. One guy, we couldn't pronounce one of the guy's names, so we just called him M'Baku, which is actually a character from Black Panther.
Black Panther, yeah.
Yeah, so we just started calling him M'Baku. And so M'Baku now, those poor kids, they probably got to a history test later on and wrote M'Baku instead of the actual dude's name. But that was the thing, was everybody was into it, and I remember saying, so do you understand how I didn't write down any of the plot points. I just told the story. And what are the core elements? We all agreed on the basic little A and B and C, but everyone had a unique take on the story. So now think about how that affects history, how that
and every religion.
Religion. I mean, I couldn't really go there with religion in third grade, but that's where I go when I have these adult conversations, is like, yeah, it's like the fundamentals are there, but how much of that human twist over the years, the different iterations of different, religious text, or the different things and all these things. And let's be honest, when church and state were one, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so
exactly, that's what I was going to say. You gave the nice version. You gave the everybody was trying
the kind to help version.
You were doing the version where everybody helps out, and they weren't trying to change the story. Now get to the part where, in reality, where people will use the Bible, because it's the first thing that popped in my head. Sorry, where ecumenical Congress, where there was we need this story told this way. Take everything else out and do what you need to do to make this happen.
Go do
it. So there's also a nefarious side to this too, is my point, is that the storytelling for generations, which I heard in the Super Bowl last night, and I wasn't really watching it, and I didn't really care, but every 20 years, I looked it up, every 20 years of the generation. So extrapolate that out for the history of how many years before writing was a thing, before record keeping was a thing, where these stories only told through oration, through talking. How many generations went through that? And then how many times did that bump it against the guy? How many people do you know who were, what's the profanity level on this TV?
Go for it. You can fucking say everything.
Okay, great. How many people do you know that are bastard flavored with bastard flavored filling? I mean, there's a bunch. I know, but
Yeah.
I can get on Twitter and say 20 in 30 seconds of people that I wouldn't let anywhere near my life.
Yeah.
So how many people telling these stories? And I'm not just going to refer to the Bible here. Any of them. Pick any just not even religion. Any story, any civilization. Think about how many bastards that had to go through who decided they were going to use it the way they wanted to use it. To put women down, to do this, to do that, to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it kind of touches on another subject we should not get into.
Oh, let's go there if you want to. I'm cool.
History, CRT.
Mm-hmm.
There's a perfect example of somebody who is using a bastardization of history to push a narrative. Now, I don't care. My kid's never probably going to be taught this anyway, but and so it shouldn't be on my radar. But I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, because you don't have to have good and evil in a story. It can just be a story. And particularly with critical race theory. Oh my God, we're going to get some emails, man. But I researched this myself, and it was taught by very well. I mean, I can bring out a senator's letter to me where I made straight A's all the way through college. So I'm not an idiot. Well, I'm an idiot, but I'm an educated idiot to a point. How about that? But I talked to a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me, and I talked to them about this, and they were like, it's patently untrue. And I'm like, well, how? Tell me how. I want to be able to know why it's patently false and it shouldn't be taught. I'm not just going to parrot you because you're telling me that.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of gentlemen, including one black gentleman, who's like, he looked at them and he went, y'all aren't going to say it, are you? And they wouldn't. And he's like, okay, I will tell you. He goes, the slaves that were brought to America were the weaker race.
Were the ones that were defeated.
And I went, excuse me? And he was like, yes, what they would do is the tribes would war, and then they would bring the losers, or they would just go attack weaker tribes and bring the losers to the beaches. Where, I'm sorry, but the white men didn't select them. You know, they kind of handpicked through them. And the ones that didn't get bought, what happened to them?
No.
They were slaughtered on a beach and fed to the sharks. So he said, everybody that's here, every black person that's here, should be thankful for their slave ancestors going through what they went through. So was it a horrible thing? Slavery was one of the worst things that's happened. It's also happened to just nearly every... what's the word I'm looking for? Every ethnicity on earth, including Scottish, so we're Irish, so we're enslaved. I'm not diminishing at all slavery, and that's not my point here. I'm saying, if you take the bastardization out, they wouldn't be America free right now, being able to say what they want to say, and their family lineages probably would not be alive if not for slavery.
Well, and there's an extension to that too. Is one, like, slavery wasn't invented in the United States. In fact, it had been going on for centuries. You look at the Egyptians enslaved the Jews. You know, there's that was.
Let me stop you there. Let me ask you a question about that. May I ask you a question? I've asked everybody I meet that ever mentions it. The Egyptians, how many people did Moses lead out of there?
I honestly, I don't know. 48. No, I don't know. I'm not sure. And,
like
and again, I say this. I make that comment not being a scholar on this. So I'm not saying
that's not. Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to hand
it. But I guess let's say thousands.
Okay, we'll say 10,000.
Okay.
It wouldn't matter, because the best record keepers of their time were the Egyptians. So tell me how we have a lot of those records. There's no accounting for 10,000 for a guy pardoning 10,000. And it would be on record, I promise you. These people kept records. Like, we have records that you wouldn't believe. Of course, we don't know how the pyramids were built, blah, 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 blah. But we do have the records of this time frame. So you kind of go, well, that's somebody who's kind of bastardized a story to mean something different for somebody, or to push an agenda. And I'm sorry for interrupting you. I was just like, you're exactly using an analogy that would prove the point.
Yeah, and all I was getting at is just that that was a economy back, and even to this day in some cultures it's still an economy to this day.
And let's not kid ourselves. I used to have Nike shoes. I wear such a large shoe, they don't make them for me anymore, and they were all made in sweatshops. And you don't think that's slavery?
Where do we get the cobalt for these?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
really get into,
and the lithium for the car
if you
batteries.
really want to talk about, slavery, let's talk about where the stuff for that. But
Lithium.
I think a couple things where one, we get caught up in narrative. I think a lot of times, and I think there is a difference between, like, I remember when, like, Black Lives Matter started versus the organization that kind of, in a way, like almost bastardized it.
Oh
And
no, not almost. They fully
they
bastardized it.
basically did. They went and bought a mansion for it. But it's like the concept was used to put us against each other. And in reality, I think there's with that, if a lot of this is designed to distract us from that. There's a group in power that wants us to not see how similar we are, and that we're all going through the struggle. We want to blame our neighbor for why the economy is the way it is, rather than what's really going on.
Lord, yes. If we got together, we would win.
We would, exactly, but we want to be distracted. Like, they want us to be distracted, and they just being essentially those in power who are pulling the strings to put this stuff against each other. But what's interesting too, there's a 5th grade lesson that I love about John Brown. Are you familiar with John Brown?
The football player?
No, not John. No, that's a football player. John, yeah, exactly. Well, he was the abolitionist, right? The abolitionist, and you know the story. And just for listeners who aren't familiar, he was abolitionist. What's great though is this lesson, and I saw it taught. I never did it myself, but I got to see others teach this. They do this. We're teaching history, and they're talking about slavery, and the teacher hands out a biography on John Brown to everybody. What the kids don't know is half the class got a biography that's a fluff piece, that's this glowing. He's this champion against abolition. He helped free the slave. He was a hero, and he did all these. He and his family, they did all these brave things to
ran the Underground Railroad.
He did all the he and Harriet Tubman were like, there was this fluff piece, and then the other half of the class got this a horrible murderer, this scumbag, this evil, murderous, demented guy, blah blah blah. All listed all the negative things. Now, granted, both had opinions, but the facts were true. The facts that they listed were true. He would murder families at the middle of the night with his family, but also the abolitionist stuff was true too. So there were all these facts, but the fluff in one, and then I guess the opposite of fluff, the tarnish, the taint,
anti-fluff.
Yeah, anti-fluff. Yeah, the propaganda. It was basically a propaganda lesson. And what was great, she got up and said, "All right, let's talk about what are some key points about John Brown." And people raised their hand, and first kid would say, he did this, and they were like, abolitionist, very good. And then he goes, yeah, and he should have been hung. And everybody's like, what? No, he was a hero. No, he's a murderer. And it was great. And what was really cool was, like, this different sides. It like different. Everybody, there was no, like, the black kids only had one view, or these kids over here didn't have one view. Everybody it was a great mix of people all arguing two sides, and they're like, no, he's a scumbag, no, he's great. And then until finally she got to the point where they realized that they had been given two different sides of the same story. And that's when it got to the critical thinking and propaganda, and talk about both could be true. Both can be true about this guy. It could be true that this guy did all these things for anti-slavery, and it could be true that he's done all these nasty things. And then that's where but what was really eye-opening to a lot of kids, and I hope it stuck with them, was how sneaky it is sometimes, where we don't realize how manipulated we already are.
Yeah.
Some of those.
A wonderful analogy, by the way. Yeah. Wonderful.
It's a great.
It's a wonderful story. I would love to have seen that in person. That's well thought out.
Yeah,
it's impressive. It goes back to the invented reality. It is a wonderful lesson, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have to do a separate talk, just politics, just to get into maybe we'll get into
because people aren't going to hate us enough after this.
Oh, they love us. But here's the thing, though. Really, though, if everything we talked about today, I feel like if you really if you really search within yourself, and again, honesty doesn't have a political party. Honesty, I'm not going to use Shapiro's thing, but honesty doesn't have a political party. Honesty isn't good. I don't want to say good or bad. It is honesty. Now, how you use honesty, you can, there is an argument. Is there ever a time where is there ever a time where telling a lie is the right thing to do?
Covertly, yes.
And
covert operations.
Yeah, covert operations. I can tell you, but then I have to kill you. That kind of thing. Also, when your significant other says, "Does this make me look fat?" You
never answer that with "No, honey. It's not the dress. It's the 20 pounds." You never answer it that way. I can tell you that right now. Yeah, you're not going in there and then
fatality. But but I do think that there's some things that just some understandings that critical thinking is very important. A lot of times we need to really stop and see how much of what's really plaguing us is our own doing, is us being caught up. Now, I'm not going to say that it's your fault that you feel this way, but there's things that you can search within yourself to really, if you truly want to help yourself get out of a rut, or truly want to pick yourself up out. It's not so much pick yourself up by the bootstraps, young lad or young lady, and pull your big girl pants or big boy pants up. But there is a thing to, I think, being honest with yourself is the most important. But then the flip side is also, don't take yourself so seriously. Kind of going back to that immortality thing too. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself. You've got, there's a difference between laughing at yourself and self-hate. Yeah. And I think if you're able to laugh at yourself and give yourself the slack that for the human that you are, I think that's the direction it goes. And I don't think anything we said, none of it's hate. None of it's designed to hate somebody, a person, group of people, a gender, or people that think a certain way. Because I think when it really boils down to it, we have so much more in common as a species than we are different. And I think we are distracted heavily by folks that want us at each other's throat rather than really truly breaking down what's important.
Oh yeah, we could have a whole podcast about the psyops of that operation. I have friends that are pretty high up in the military where in different. I have cousins who are at the CIA, currently work there, and some of this stuff's true, man. Not they're conspiracy theories for a reason.
Yeah.
But well, I will say this though: if you're watching the people die beside each other on a battlefield, color doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yep. You'll be in your brother's arms either way there, or your sister's arms either way there, and that's been historical. Mm-hmm. And let's just backtrack, because we did discuss slavery here, and just say you're the pastiest white guy I know other than me. And
it's not just the lighting.
Yeah, I live in Alabama. Okay, I have not met anybody in 22 years or so who thought a black life didn't matter. Mm-hmm. There was no need for that movement. Do you wish death upon any black person?
No, not at all.
And I don't either.
I don't wish it. See that, and then that's another topic. Is I think wishing death. That's a question to ask, because there's the human side of me that pauses, but I have a hard time wishing death on anybody.
Yeah, I have a hard time, except for, well, I'm gonna say it, except for pedophiles. If you're a proven pedophile,
that's what gets me. It's like pedophiles, and then you say like Hitler or something like that, and it's like, well, maybe, but it's like even that, it's like, well, those mentally ill people that need something, that fixed in them. Now maybe the cure is a Colt 45, but it's still. I'm saying, like I have to really catch myself, because when I say I don't want any wish death on anybody, you bring up pedophiles, you bring up like extreme Nazis. It's like, well, I didn't shed a tear in Indiana Jones when the Nazis got their faces melted off. I didn't cry for them at all. So yeah, I guess that's, and absolutes are kind of a trap in its own thing. When you try to believe in absolutes, then there's always that way.
Yeah, we do have to be honest that there are people out there who do believe the exact opposite of what we do. We have to be real too. That's the realistic. There are people out there who do, believe they're racist. We know there are definitely people out there who would wish harm on somebody else for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just got hung up on our own invented reality of there's two sides, and we did it to ourselves.
Well,
so I mean,
I got to tell you that I hope this is the first of many chats with you. At Mindful Legacy is your handle. Matthew Jacobs. There's so much more we haven't even touched on with you. I mean, I'd love to talk more have you back on another time to talk more of your history. I know that I'm working on a panel coming up on raising children with autism. And if you'd be interested in being part of that, I think that you'd be a great person to have on there to talk about that. If you'd be interested, we can talk offline about that. But if you could give our listeners just better than a fortune cookie piece of advice to take away with them after we went through this, we didn't go through the rabbit hole. We dug further to the magma, to the core. But any like more than a fortune cookie piece of advice to give people to take away.
More than a fortune cookie.
Yeah.
Wow. The sound of rain needs no translation.
Interesting.
That would be, it was the title of one of my books, part of the title of one of my books.
Mm-hmm.
And I stole it from Alan Watts. And to me, it means exactly what we were talking about today. You know what rain sounds like. You don't need to be told what rain sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll use that towards your life, and do yourself a favor, pick up a copy. This is going to be a long fortune cookie, but pick yourself a copy of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations.
Mm-hmm.
Flip past the point where he thanks everybody, which is about 40 pages long, and just understand that he wrote that intending nobody to ever read it, and realize how powerful those words are, and that he was trying to do something with his life, and that you can too. And nobody's at lost cause. You're not as bad as you think you are. Just like I said, you don't need to be told anything. You are fine just the way you are. And if you learn to accept that, then you'll see your problems melt away.
That's awesome. Awesome. Matthew Jacobs, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. And everybody, thank you for tuning in on behalf of Matthew Jacobs, on behalf of Marcus Aurelius and everybody. And I guess we'll throw in John Brown as well. This has been Myndrunner, and thank you for tuning in to a very lighthearted episode of Mental Health Mondays. We'll see you next time. Always remember, you are not alone. Catch full episodes every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.